the conversation around elder care. Okay, recording in progress. Thank you. And again, welcome everybody. I just gave a quick intro, but because we're recording, I'll just back up and say welcome to the Spark series. We are now introducing Allegra and Hillary and Hank to talk about this important conversation around elder care. Each of them bring a unique personal perspective and professional experience to the conversation around elder care. And to get together today, they'll help us think through not only how to support our parents, but also how to plan for our own future care with intention, with foresight and planning. Let me introduce each of our panelists real quickly, and then we'll jump on into it. Allegra Lowitt began her post-Wharton journey with Accenture and then moved into the CPG world, leading several B2B brands from concept to successful transition. She now serves on multiple boards and, like many of us, is actively engaged in caring for her own parents. Hillary Rush, after Wharton, joined a group that later became part of PwC. And over the past years, Hillary has built an exciting career in life science marketing and strategy. Today, she leads marketing for an innovative firm called Embed. And finally, Hank Shu. He took the investment banking route, focusing on M&A and later serving in CFO roles across industry. Most recently, Hank stood up a franchise called Amanda Senior Care. It's a senior home care services company that supports families across greater New Jersey. And what's really exciting about that is Hank has taken it upon himself to combine his professional expertise, all these years of business and finance, with a very human mission. Before we dive in, a quick thanks to Lisa Newberger and Monisha Eltz for continuing to lead this Spark series. They create a space where we can share our experiences, we can trade valuable lessons, we can lift each other up and support our careers and our life. Okay, so now to our panelists. Allow me to say we are honored to have each of you with us today, not only for your professional insights, but also your personal reflections that you'll share. Please join me in welcoming our first speaker, Allegra Lowitt, who's going to kick us off with her story and some very practical tools for building your own care team and a long-term plan. Allegra, over to you.
Thanks, JB. I don't know. Are you going to flip the slides for me? I don't know if we're moving down on those, but that would be
I
great.
will. Okay.
One more. Wonderful. So, nope, let's go back one up and then we'll be all set. So, um, hey, good afternoon, everybody. I've been the executor or trustee for a number of family members over the last 10 years. I've learned a lot along the way. I've made a lot of mistakes, but I hope that these slides will make your life easier. They're really all about planning and assembling your team as you start to go through this lovely process. Okay, JB, next slide. So I don't know if anybody wants to raise their hand. I don't know if anybody has a parent or a relative who likes to do the ostrich. Um, I do. My mother, my aunt are very good at this. And I find that financial planning, end of life planning, this can get people very stressed out. And they want to avoid it. But I found that with the process I'm going to lay out for you, you can get your family members organized, and getting organized now really, really reduces stress and problems later. So with that, let's get into the next slide. So at Wharton, we're all about the team, right? And I think that assembling your team is the foundation. So we'll talk about a couple key team players, and you probably have a bunch of them already. So number one is the doctor. Your parents probably, hopefully, have a family doctor. And I find that it's really great to get to meet this person in person, face to face. If you live in the same town, sometimes you can like pop in by phone or video call these days. but they're a great resource, they're a great partner. And if your parent does get sick, or there is a fall, or they do have dementia, this person can really help you, navigate, um, as needed. My stepfather has dementia. We ended up needing to deem him incompetent. And, I called the doctor and I said, he's just not making a lot of sense right now. Like he's really had this downturn. And we brought him in. The doctor tested him. He agreed. But it was much easier having a relationship with him already, rather than coming in cold. Okay, enough on doctors. Um, the other person that's great is a lawyer. If your parents have a trusted lawyer, that's great. It's a person who can draw up their will, but they can also do other roles like a power of attorney, or just be a sounding board, as they kind of go through this process. The third is a financial advisor. We're all word nights. If your parent has a financial advisor, that's great. But I find that, um, for my aunt, our financial advisor paid all her bills. As they get older,
Oh,
bill payment becomes a bigger issue.
the
Um,
marketplace is better
and
than it might be
uh-oh,
wrong.
probably need to press mute if anybody isn't on mute. Um, the financial advisor is also a great person to help build a 10-year plan. And they can kind of, bug your parent to do things that maybe you think they should be doing, but they're not doing. And it's just good to be introduced to them, if your relatives are willing, so that, if there are problems or your parent is in the hospital and can't pay bills, you know who to call. Uh, Um, Last but not least, is the geriatric care manager. And I think this is really like the unsung hero. And it wasn't something that I knew about when I started this. They're often a social worker, but not always. And this is a person who knows the resources in your parents' area, neighborhood, et cetera. They can help figure out, independent living or, other living options. They can help create a care team for your parent. But what I would say is this is one of those players that it's so helpful to have ahead of time so that when the crisis hits, like it did with my stepfather, we were really fortunate. We already had the person in place, we already had our contracts in place. So when we needed to bring care quickly into our home, that was something that could just get up and running really fast. Okay, so JB, oh, by the way, I don't know if we told this to everybody, but if you do, yeah, you can switch sides, JB. Thank you. If you do have questions along the way, you can put them in the chat. And I think JB's monitoring those. I think we're doing questions at the end, but
Yep.
feel free to pile questions in, if you have them. Okay, so in addition to, the key players and assembling a team, having certain documents on hand really makes an enormous world of difference. So probably everybody knows about the will. I think it's great to, ask your parents, do they have a will? Where is it? Is it with the lawyer? Is it in the safe deposit box? Sometimes, when people pass, everybody's running around trying to find this thing. So it's good to know. Um, the second document is, a healthcare proxy. And again, this is the document so that if your loved one can't make decisions, this about their health, this is the person who will make those. And, again, my stepfather has dementia, but he's fairly early on in the process in some ways, but he's been deemed incompetent, and I am his healthcare proxy. And like all of a sudden, like all of those healthcare decisions are coming to me. And I really need to get to his doctor's appointments and other things. So I would say, if you're deciding with your siblings or thinking about who should be the healthcare proxy, it is nice to have somebody who lives in the same city, so that you can go to those doctor's appointments in person. Um, okay. Then we touched on it briefly, but um, gee, I can't read text and talk at the same time. I won't do that. So on the financial plan, I think it's really great to have a 10-year financial plan. I think that some parents do this and other parents kind of shy away from it and don't want to deal with it. I am the trustee and power of attorney for my aunt. And I kind of said, look, honey, I really need you to do this if I'm going to be your power of attorney. So she didn't have a financial advisor. So I gifted her mine from Morgan Stanley, and I sat down with her and I made a scorecard with her, all her assets, her liabilities, her annual run rate, package that up, send it to Morgan Stanley so they could just whip out the plan. And I wasn't surprised to see that she was going to run out of money in 5 years. I kind of had a feeling about that. But at least it let us, have a planning session. She does have some other sort of hidden resources. She does have a summer house that she doesn't want to sell, but she could. And at least to start, a dialogue about, how we're going to manage her 5 years was good. Last but not least is the power of attorney. And I find that this isn't talked about as much, but it's a super critical and powerful document. And essentially, if your loved one is not able to make financial decisions or is deemed incompetent, the power of attorney is going to make all their financial and legal decisions. So, for a lot of people, it can be their lawyer, it can be a sibling, it can be a trusted friend. When my aunt was in the hospital, the POA kicked in, and that was helpful to her children, so that bills could be paid and things like that could flow. For my stepfather, his power of attorney is a lawyer. And again, he was recently deemed incompetent. So now all of the legal and financial planning has fallen onto his shoulders and essentially mine as the trustee. So I will say you need to be careful what you sign up for because it is a lot of work. But at least you know what's going on. Um, there are, it's also just worth knowing there are two types of power of attorneys. One is the kind my stepfather had, which didn't turn on until he was deemed incompetent. And a lot of parents, right, like their privacy. The only problem with that is that it's a lot for someone to take on immediately. Like I've gone from 0 to 60 trying to understand, all the finances and everything. The other type of power of attorney, which I have with my mother and my aunt, it actually lets me make financial decisions for them today along the way. And again, not lots of parents don't want that, but for parents who are not financially savvy, it can be the right way to go. Okay. JB, next slide. This is really my last slide. So for everybody out there, one of my most important pieces of advice is to check the assumptions and look up who the beneficiaries are for the securities, 401k, life insurance, and your house deed. You can do this for yourself, do it for your parents, but I've seen on a number of occasions that what people think they did is not what they actually did. So, for example, um, you know, John and Judy got married. They had two boys. They, changed all their forms, put their boys down as the beneficiaries, and then, 6 years later, had a daughter, but, never got around to going back to those forms. They list all three kids in their will, but when they die, the boys are listed as the beneficiaries for all their securities. And here's a dirty secret, but the beneficiaries for your securities, if you filed the death on the transfer on death paperwork and they're your beneficiaries, it doesn't matter what your will says. As soon as that death certificate is given to the financial advisor, those assets are going to transfer. Um, and by the way, if your relatives don't have a complicated will and they don't own property, they probably don't need a fancy will. It's really these beneficiary forms that are the things that matter. And they will skip probate, they will skip everything. So again, check those. Um, Last but not least, I know nobody wants to do this, but it's great to just understand what your parent wants or loved one wants in terms of, do they want to be buried? Do they want to be cremated? If they want to be buried, have they purchased a plot? Are they next to the person they want to be next to? Make sure all your siblings are on the same page. My aunt wanted to be cremated, and one of her sons is very religious, had a hissy about it, and really wanted his mother to be buried. In the end, she agreed, and her other son was okay with it, and she was, she's been buried. But when someone passes, it's not the time to be running around trying to figure that stuff out. Do it ahead of time. Okay, JB, that's really all of the content I have trying to be done in the amount of time. If you flip to the next slide, I have a checklist for you all for later, and my contact information is in there as well in case people want to chat outside of this forum.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Allegra. We are right on time. We do not have time yet for questions. However, if you want to add them into the chat bar, as Monisha mentioned earlier, please do so. We'll try to get to them at the end or afterwards. Let's proceed next to Hillary, who's going to talk about home care and hospice and some of the challenging surprises that go with it. Hillary, I pass the mic to you.
Okay, thanks so much. And thanks, Allegra, for sharing the importance of preparation. It really makes things so much easier for those who will be ultimately caring for us as well. So it's good to think about in many, many regards. For my section now, I'm going to take the next 10 to 12 minutes just to talk to you personally about my very personal experience caring for my mother with progressive dementia. And then at the end, I'll kind of recap some of the key lessons I learned on my journey, and also some questions to add to your list when you are vetting different facilities for care. So many of us, we're juggling careers, school-age kids, and aging parents who need help. I think they call it the sandwich generation. And you can visually see it right there on the slide. That's me and my children and my mother. It was a sandwich. And in 2021, this dynamic really hit home for me. It was my mom's first post-COVID visit. She came up from Florida. My brother and I realized that there was just no way she could return to Florida to live alone. We noticed there were some changes in her memory, decision-making, even her physical balance. And then after a fall, an MRI revealed that she'd even had a prior stroke. She was just 74 years old and healthy otherwise, but these early signs of dementia seemed to be progressing very fast, and we needed a plan. So, but my brother and I, we were same boat, very limited bandwidth to take care of her personally. And neither of us had homes that were really suitable for her mobility needs. She had terrible arthritis in her knees, hands, and then maybe many of you can relate to this as well. She also had a very difficult personality that progressive dementia was exasperating. So it was a tough, very tough dynamic for us. And our first step, just to kind of stabilize, was to put her into this independent luxury independent living facility. And it was just month-to-month rent, which was great, but it was really designed for very active seniors who didn't really need help, day-to-day help. And although meals and activities are included, it's all the additional care would need to be in an extra cost, and you would need to arrange for that and bring that help in from the outside. But this helped us while we worked to sell her Florida home and just understand the dynamics of this next stage. But her constant calls to us, asking for help, asking for us to be involved, we realized it wasn't going to be sustainable. But to put that help in place at this facility, we were modeling out. You want to model out how many years? I mean, she's healthy otherwise, she could live another 20 years. So we had to make sure that her money would last. And in this facility with extra care brought in, it wasn't going to. So we know that we needed to we knew that we needed to find something else. And we suggested assisted living. We saw that she could probably benefit, but she resisted fiercely. And I think I can even see from some of the notes, resistance is a key theme. So she complained. She said she didn't want to be with decrepit, drooling old people, and she was young. And on her good days, she was sharp, witty, playing mahjong. She hid her dementia well. So my brother and I caved, and we did compromise on an independent living facility. It had an assisted wing, so technically down the road she could move to that if needed. But the main thing was this promise, and we'll talk about this promise a little later on. The facility promised they had the ability to put incremental, flexible nursing aid assistance in place, even little short duration shifts when and if needed. For example, if there was an illness she was recovering from, or a little fall, or a need for some help. So it really sounded ideal. And she was able to pass the mental examination, and she bought in. She bought in for several $100,000, and then it was quite a sustainable month to month fee. And we thought this was good. So we had some extra money then to bring in a bit of outside help, because what we learned with nursing aid, especially my mom with her dementia and her arthritis, she was unable to open her pill bottles and sort properly her medications, a very important activity which is something that unfortunately nursing aides cannot assist with. Only skilled nurses can open and help with medication. So this is a gap that we had to figure out how to manage. And I turned to care.com, and I was, you have to take that on yourself firsthand. You have to vet the talent, stay close to it. I definitely recommend in those scenarios that you manage all the finances directly with a care.com resource. Pay them, and if they buy stuff for your parent, make sure that all flows through you for their financial security. But it is a great resource, and they can, they're not limited in terms of the types of help that they can help you with, and they can build a nice relationship with you and with your parent. So it was a nice creative gap filler for my brother and I to have that put in place. And it worked. It worked for some months. But then we realized it kind of came to a head. My mom fell. The care.com resource was going to be going on vacation. And then we decided to activate that help the facility had promised. And they said, yes, that is an offering, but unfortunately right now we're short staffed. We won't be able to get that help in place for several weeks. All of our aides right now are very tied up helping other residents. So that was a shock for us. And they told us, what you guys need to do is hire your own agency and bring them in. Oh, but by the way, when you do, we can no longer help you with our aides because there can only be one agency of record in place. So this whole dynamic, we realized, was an incredibly unhelpful and unsustainable situation for my mother. So an independent living facility was just not going to be able to help us manage through these different phases of care that we needed. And only 8 months in to having bought into this, we were once again moving out. And we did move her into an assisted living facility at that point. She was upset. It felt like a step down, but the new space was very nice. In fact, in the picture here, that was the living room of her new apartment in the assisted living facility. She was able to present herself in a coherent enough way that she once again, she was approved for application. She started up her care there. And that was good because what we learned along the way, very important to note, is that memory care, which is another option for people with dementia, is about the same level of care as assisted. However, it comes with a lot of extra cost for lockdown, for security support. This was completely unnecessary in the case of my mom, and maybe you're in a similar situation. My mom is a 0% flight risk. She wouldn't leave her room, and in fact, soon after moving into the assisted living, she wouldn't even leave her bed. So she was not even a flight risk. So we were very, very happy to be able to put this new situation in place in an assisted living facility. And what we did is we were able to let the care.com resource go, and my brother was able to manage the medication. So we had all the different components in place, and we were able to go like this for about 1 year until her dementia reached the terminal phase. Now, this is where the most important aha moment, what I want to share with you all, comes in. We did bring in hospice at that time and visiting nurse association to help 24/7 support with my mom. And you can see even here, the hospice had set up a really comfortable bed right in her living room, right where she wanted to be. And they offered amazing care, not only for my mom, but also for us, for as a family. I can't say enough about how wonderful hospice care was. And I recommend bringing it in much earlier than, as early as possible, much earlier than you would think, because it's not truly, to use their own marketing language, it's not about the end of life. It's about quality of life at the end. And in the last few days of her life, we were also able to move her into their actual facility, into a beautiful room where she was able, to pass in a very peaceful and dignified way. And this all happened within just 3 years. She passed at age 77. So it was amazing how quickly this all happened. And to tie back to what Allegra was saying, when things happen, they happen so much quicker than you would expect. Actually, next slide, John, because this is part of my key takeaways here.
Sure.
You want to act quickly to put your plans in place. It's shocking how quickly dementia can progress. And your parent might not want to bypass independent living. They might fight you, like mine did. But I recommend pushing. I recommend engaging in what I would call compassionate trickery, whatever means you can to convince them to go to that next level of care sooner rather than later. I can say I do wish I made this uncomfortable push with my mom so that we didn't have all that bouncing around.
Mm-hmm.
Care.com, it is a fantastic resource, and it can help patch gaps in your care plan in a much more cost-effective manner. And these are my mom's own words that she had always said to my brother and I earlier in her life: hospice too early is better than hospice too late. So that's the most important takeaway. And then on the next slide, John, I did want to share just a few. I'm sure you guys all have your own long lists of questions, but make sure some of these are on there as well. When you're evaluating facilities, remember it's a sales pitch from them to you, so you need to sort through what you're hearing, and really understand what types and levels of care can be added in if as needed, how quickly those can be engaged, and then ask to speak directly firsthand to the person who manages those flexible resources, so that you feel very confident in their offering. How quickly can they respond in a crisis? Find out if they have a social worker or maybe a nurse who takes on this duty. And this should be an exclusive duty that this person has, not just one of many, many activities they're performing, that will reach out and respond to a family member, and in any type of, to respond to their questions or in any type of crisis. How quickly do they respond? If they say it depends or I'm not sure, not a good answer. And again, when you find out who that person is, go talk to them too firsthand, interview them. Another thing is on-site medical support. This became very important to us since my mom wouldn't leave the room. Do they bring that medical support on site? We really liked at the assisted living facility, the final place she was at, that they brought primary care support right to the facility. So there was even primary care doctors that came there and would even come and do the visits in her room. That was really important to us. So, you know, vetting these resources and really making sure that, you know, that you have a lot of confidence in the plan they're going to put together for you and their offerings is very recommended as you go to the different facilities and make your decisions. So with that all in mind, with my personal experience, I'd like to now turn it on over to Hank, because he will be able to share a broader view of care options from his perspective as a home care agency owner. So,
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Hillary.
So I'm Hank. For those of you who don't know me, I know a lot of people on the phone, so it's really nice to see some familiar faces. JB, could you go to the next slide? And so I can just go through quickly. The last 2 years, I've been the owner of a home care agency, Amada Senior Care Hoboken. We provide unskilled and skilled care for our clients in the area. We specialize in long-term care insurance administration. We're also approved by the VA to provide home care for veterans, paid for by the VA. And we provide placement services to assisted living facilities in the area. JB, next slide. So a lot of you, may be going through this now, like Allegra, Hillary. Some of you may be fortunate it didn't happen or it hasn't happened yet, or it may have happened already. For me, it's happened, with my parents a while ago. But, depending on what stage you are, we want to educate you on, what's going on and how do you think about it. So the way I like to frame this is, with what is happening or is going to happen to your parents are going to go through some sort of either physical impairment or cognitive impairment or both. So physical impairment, meaning, the obvious ones like Parkinson's disease, stroke, cancer, COPD, diabetes, heart disease. Cognitive impairment, meaning Alzheimer's disease or dementia. Next slide, JB. What this all basically boils down to is that your parents they're going to lose their independence either quickly or slowly, but they may start losing their mobility. So they were walking and running up to a certain point, and then now they're in a rollator, a walker, or wheelchair, or at some point maybe they're bedbound. They could also be going through a cognitive decline, so they start forgetting things. They start, misplacing things. They get very confused. They can't remember what year it is. You'll start noticing these things where, their normal routine gets very disrupted. Ultimately, they will need assistance with what's called activities of daily living. This is, the basic stuff that we take for granted: bathing, dressing, eating, toileting, continence, and transferring. JB, next slide. So what we wanted to do here is just kind of put a framework together for, what are your options? The range of options, some of them we touched on with Allegra and Hillary, but it ranges from home care to independent living to assisted living to a skilled nursing facility in the long-term wing. And we'll go through each one. So for home care, this is often called aging in place. Parents get older and they just don't want to leave their home. And based on their condition, this may be a very viable option. For some folks, it isn't based on the level of skill involved, but if you're willing to pay for it, the skill level can be there if you have more funds. But so on the non-skilled side, the non-skilled home care is basically you have a non-skilled caregiver. So what does that mean? They can assist with the activities of daily living. They cannot assist with anything medical. So I think Hillary touched on medication administration, right? That's something that it doesn't seem like a big deal, right? For you or I or a family member to just put pills in a pill box, but caregivers can't do it. You need a nurse at some skilled level to be able to do that legally. Now, I'm not saying that people don't do it illegally, but for an agency to do it, they have to have a skilled worker like a nurse to do it. So if you want to go the home care route, you can hire a private caregiver, and this is basically go through care.com and find a caregiver. You have to manage them on their own. It's like hiring your own nanny or babysitter. You know, you're literally working with them on their own. It's much less expensive, but if that person calls out, doesn't show up to work, whatever, you have to manage that, by yourself. I own an agency, so what we provide is a higher level of care. Not only the fact that we have nurses on staff, but we also, manage call outs. So if someone calls out, we find someone else that will fill in. Now, on the skilled home care side, this is medical, right? So I'm trying to bifurcate this non-skilled and skilled, non-medical, medical. So on the medical side, if you need medical assistance, you're going to hire an agency or you're going to hire a private duty nurse. Same concept. If you find a nurse on care.com or you find a nurse at a hospital that's willing to moonlight with you, the price differential, it's much cheaper, but you have to manage that person on your own. Very important that you understand that the skilled home care, they're going to deal with medicine administration, catheter care, wound care, trach, anything that requires a nurse. Caregivers are really considered non-skilled, and they will really help with the basic stuff. So try and keep that in mind when you're thinking about what it is you need. Oftentimes people get confused that they think, oh, it's a nurse that's showing up. With a home care agency like mine, these folks are caregivers. They call them certified home health aides in the state of New Jersey, and they are unskilled. Next slide, JB. So the next step on the spectrum is an independent living facility, which Hillary spoke about. So independent living facilities are just that. It's apartment style living with full kitchens. Typically, they're wheelchair accessible. There are dining options, so it's a dining room for the residents, and there are social wellness and recreational activities for the residents, planned out throughout the month. Typically, there are transportation services to go shopping or go to the mall. And, as Hillary alluded to, there are no caregivers or medical staff really assigned to you as a norm, right? You're on your own. It's independent, and that's it. You're on your own. Now, there are resources there like activities and social and dining, but for the most part, the resident is expected to be able to take care of themselves, for the most part. They're typically attached to an assisted living facility and or a skilled nursing facility, so that as the senior progresses through different stages, that it's very easy to just go from one wing to the next. Next slide, JB. Assisted living facilities are the next stage. This is more like hotel room style living with kitchenettes with, a microwave and a small little refrigerator, but you have, it's 3 square meals, dining options there, wheelchair accessible areas, common living areas. So you're going to have a sitting area, a dining room, TV area, activity center, all these activities to really keep the seniors occupied. Also, there could be a memory care unit attached, as Hillary alluded to. It's a lockdown unit, so it's a floor or a wing where you cannot get out. Like I've been in these just to talk to a resident, and I have to go ask for permission for the code to get released. So it is a lockdown. It's very, very very strict who goes in and out of this area. The biggest difference with assisted and independent is that there are caregivers and medical staff on site. They are there to support the families and the residents fully. Sometimes there'll be OT and PT folks there as well, but it's a much more robust sort of support system versus an independent, and you pay for it. The cost differential is pretty high. So skilled nursing facility, long term. Now, I want to differentiate long term versus just an acute facility. So, what most people don't know is when you go to a skilled nursing facility, there's the short-term wing and the long-term wing. And the long-term wing really is filled with folks who don't really, they need a lot more care than an assisted living facility will be able to provide. 24/7 medical staff, you're typically in a shared room. It looks and feels like a hospital, and the common areas are pretty minimal. So, a lot of people don't, they say, I'm only going to a nursing facility. There's a reason why, right? You're basically in a hospital room, you're sharing it, and the staff is, mostly medical. They're not there to support you socially or engage you socially. They're there really to take care of you medically. And that is the look and feel. And so, it's not ideal for families, but ultimately, if they feel like the medical needs really outweigh everything else, then that, is kind of the last resort. Next slide. So everyone asks me, how much does it cost? Next slide, JB. And my answer is it depends, but it's a lot, unfortunately. It varies state by state. Everything varies state by state. I could quote you about New Jersey, but again, if you live in Arizona, it's going to be wildly different. So I don't really want to quote you anything. But it really varies on the cost of labor from home care to all the way to assisted living, right? It really depends on real estate, labor, among other things. So I don't want to scare people. Depending on what state you live in, if you want to talk to me later about it, I'm happy to kind of give you guidance, but I don't want to quote anyone because even talking with Allegra and Hillary, it just varies very widely. Next slide. The next question is, how am I going to pay for it? Great question. Next slide. So there is a misconception that Medicare and Medicaid is going to just take care of you once you hit 65. This may or may not be true, depending on what you're looking for. So I just want to state a couple facts so it's clarified, at least within this group. So Medicare is medical coverage, right? And it covers some medical costs for folks who are 65 and older. It may cover up to 100 days in a skilled nursing facility, but it does not, and I repeat, does not cover any long-term home care or assisted living facility. So, when you think about all the non-medical stuff, non-skilled care, right? Medicare is not going to cover it, unfortunately. I'm always the bearer of bad news with families, when they, talk to me about home care, they're sitting in a skilled nursing facility. Say, is Medicare going to cover it? Unfortunately, no. You cannot count on Medicare to really, cover anything that's non-medical. So the next question is, isn't Medicaid going to help? Well, Medicaid can. So it can cover medical and it can cover long-term care costs, but this is really based on financial need, which also varies by state. But this is basically the ultimate safety net if you're really, really, really poor. So, for those of you on the phone, or on this call, I don't really want you to look at this as, hey, I'm going to count on Medicaid to save my parents, right? It's not a good strategy unless you've got, a 5-year spend down strategy to an assisted living facility that will hold a Medicaid bed for you. So I really want to stress with you, Medicare and Medicaid aren't going to cover long-term care, home care costs. Next slide. So other than mom sitting on a pile of cash, dad's got, an annuity, they've got a great 401k, let's just say they don't. So we always talk to our clients about what could be other potential funding sources. Long-term care insurance. We always ask this because we're really good at administrating for our clients. This is like life insurance, but for long-term care. Your parents would have purchased this 20, 30 years ago, paying premiums every year, every month. They'll know if they have it. This covers home care, assisted living facilities, and skilled nursing facilities, room and board. So if they do have it, congratulations. But not everyone does. We find that like 1 in 10, 1 in 15 families have this for their parents. The VA. The VA will pay for some home care and long-term care in a VA facility if they're eligible. If your parent is a veteran, definitely ask the question. Try and figure out whether they're eligible for VA benefits. Home equity. If your parent has been sitting in their house for decades, thinking about their home equity as a source of an asset to pay for home care, either through a reverse mortgage or through a home equity loan, is something that you should consider. Last thing is a life insurance swap. This is basically, if your parent has a life insurance policy greater than $100,000, they can swap it into dollars today for whatever you want to use it. We always talk about home care or assisted living, whatever it is. But if they've got an insurance policy that the kids say, look, I sure could use the money today versus wait until they pass, this is something to think about. You're not going to get dollar for dollar for those proceeds. It's going to be at a steep discount, but sometimes it's worth, exploring. And last thought for everyone on the phone, I know we're running out of time. Do you want to live to 100? Next slide. So we're all, I'm guessing in our 50s-ish, and, our parents are in their 70s, 80s-ish. I've observed a lot, and I've learned a lot about age and longevity in the last 2 years, not only from observing my clients, but also thinking about how I want to, live for the next 30 years, 30, 40 years. And we are all at a pivotal age where what we do today will determine how long and how well we live for the rest of our lives. And so I just want everyone to really think about, what they're doing today. Can they improve it, and what matters, right? I've listed a couple things that matter: diet, exercise, sleep, having purpose in your life, not only today, but think about when you're 80. Think about your parents. They're retired. What are they doing? What are they waking up for? So think about, am I going to have purpose in my life when I turn 85? Am I going to have a support group when I turn 85? Meaning, will I have family? Will I have kids? Will I have friends around? And I think this is super important. Am I going to be mentally engaged, when I get older after I don't have a job and my kids are grown up? And what does that mean? It means, what do I do during the day, right? Am I sitting watching Fox News all day, or am I actually engaging with people who are younger or my age or whatever, playing mahjong? It doesn't really matter, but what am I doing to engage my brain? Use it or lose it is very true when we talk about our brain. If you don't use your brain as you get older, it will naturally deteriorate. So, engaging yourself and really, getting it moving is really important. Anyway, I really appreciate everyone's time. My contact details are on the next slide. Again, Amada Senior Care in New Jersey. My contact details are here. I encourage everyone, if you have further questions about anything that I've spoken about, please reach out to me, either phone or email. I'd be happy to talk to you. Thank you.
Fantastic. Fantastic, Hank. Thanks so much. So we have about we have about 3 or 4 minutes to take questions, and then I'll close out the session. Allegra has done a great job at responding to various questions as we've been going. Let me stop sharing just for a second here. Wow, yeah. Oh, now I can see everybody. What a big group. This is great. So are there folks who want to jump in or maybe elaborate on a couple of key questions that have come up during the session?
And people have been posting good book recommendations as well, inspired by Hank's final comments there. So
Okay,
it's
excellent.
good to note in the chat as well.
Excellent. Anybody have additional questions you'd like to throw out there? Okay, I would like to throw just one or two quick questions. I know, Hillary, you had mentioned that there were these, really very real gaps. I think, Hank, you mentioned that too. I think a critical success point for each of us would be to figure out what those gaps are within our state, within our family, our situation. How do you best go around figuring out those gaps? Do we work through Allegra's prep sheet to get started? Or, I mean, you found some gaps that most of us probably wouldn't find very quickly until we got very deeply into, our own unique situation.
And I think yeah, Hank reinforced it with the memory care and navigating that, and also the skilled nursing facilities. Sometimes those might almost be the only options if dementia or the need for care has progressed beyond a certain point. So sometimes you aren't even able to have more choice over what gaps to fill, and you have to go kind of overkill and put, and that can be a very unhappy situation too. So it's, I think, about trying to get something that's sustainable in place early and quickly, because for instance, when my mom was in the assisted living facility, they told me, she's in it now and you have all this, you put all the right care in place, so obviously we can't kick her out, but technically, she should be in a skilled nursing home at this point. And I was so grateful that we had gotten her in there and put all of that in place, because it was a much nicer way to spend that final year of her life with dementia than in the skilled nursing home, as Hank described. So I think it's, to Allegra's point, early planning, and then my point, dementia happens much quicker, or can happen much quicker and progress much quicker than you
Got it.
realize.
Got it. Thank you. And one other question that came up was this notion of, we're talking a lot about, caregiving and end of life, but a major surgery, a major medical procedure. I was talking with Stacy Hyatt a day or two ago about that. A lot of the things we're talking about now can also apply to temporary care. Maybe Allegra, Hank, Hillary, maybe you guys have a comment or two on that, on just this notion of how to deal with someone who has a major surgery but not yet in, the swim lane of end of life care.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think I'll just hop in quickly, but I think a geriatric care manager is great because they can help figure out, are you going to be going to a facility to recuperate? Do you need to bring care into your home? Do you have a family member who's going to be providing that? If you don't have a family member who's going to be providing that, then again, maybe having a short-term option like that, or bringing in, nursing is needed. But I'll let Hank speak to that because he probably knows the
Great.
details.
Yeah, Hank, if you could comment on that, and then I'll close it out because we're running shy on time.
Yeah, so we definitely jump in. We've had folks who, elder, seniors who are otherwise healthy, may have broken a bone, and they just need help at home, just doing the basic stuff. So we'll jump in for 2 weeks, a month, 2 months, to make sure that they're okay during kind of this interim phase where they just need to recover. So I would say if there's a situation where you may need help for a limited period of time, certainly an agency can help jump in and take care of your family member very easily.
Okay, excellent. Thanks. So, wow, what a conversation. We're moving into the final part of the session today. So let me just recap a couple of key points, some keynotes that I took. Allegra, I think you really spoke well to the power of preparation. Specifically, what's your 5-year plan? I think you mentioned 10-year. And so for some of us, that's a bit ambitious, but a 10-year plan, a 5-year plan, get that plan in place now. You have your checklist handy that we will hand out later, which is fantastic. Hillary, you talked a lot about these gaps, these gotchas, which are really, I mean, made you move twice within basically a year period. And so the better you prepare for these gaps and identify them, you're just going to be so much better off. You talked about hospice, getting hospice earlier. It's more about quality of life, not end of life. And then Hank, you talked a lot about what it's like from the industry perspective, which was fantastic, helping us better understand the options that are out there, and also what they don't cover systematically, because there are some big costs that are involved. We all have homework to figure out that based on where we live in the States, which state we're at, or maybe in Europe or beyond. On behalf of the Spark team, I would like to, and on behalf of our audience, panelists, thank you so much. Allegra, Hillary, and Hank, thank you so much. You've shared your time generously, your professional insights. I really appreciate that. Your personal stories are phenomenal. And it's not easy. It takes some courage to talk about these things. And so I appreciate you helping all of us with what we're looking at and exploring. To the audience, do something as you reflect on the session. take one small step. I encourage you to ask some more questions, do the additional planning, reach out to Hank or Hillary Allegra, any of us who can help you further explore. There's so much more information out there. In July 2025, AARP published a very large study. I will send that out afterwards. It's 100 or 200 pages solely focused on caregiving. And they answer so many different questions that might also further inform your own unique journey. So we'll send that out to you afterwards. I encourage you to take that step. Get the preparation done. If you'd like to revisit anything, we'll have that circulated. And then finally, I'd like to just spend a second or two. Maybe I should share the final slide again so you can see the we do have a YouTube channel that Monisha mentioned earlier. I do have a call to action for you guys. Are you at the forefront of your game? Would you like to inspire and lift and support other members of the Wharton class and those related to us? If so, raise your hand, sign up. A lot of you, there's about 10 or so of you, had mentioned either nominated folks who can speak in future sessions, or maybe you yourself are thinking about sharing some of your knowledge. It can be on anything. Our next session coming up is very interesting. It's on international real estate and selling. I don't have a date for that yet, but that's coming up too. It's on global trends in real estate. We've had sessions on AI, we've had sessions on democracy, and now caregiving. So if you have expertise that you want to share and you would like to do that in a group session or solo, raise your hand, reach out to Lisa, Monisha, myself. We'll get you coordinated and we'll support you and continue this great energy that came out of our Wharton 25 class reunion. As a final thanks again, Hank, Hillary, and Allegra, thank you. On behalf of our participants, the Spark team, and all of our listeners today, thank you for joining. We'll see you next time. This ends our formal presentation. I will keep the line open if some of you want to hang out and have additional questions separately. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
John.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, John. Thanks, Allegra. Thanks, Hillary.
Thank you.
Thanks, Allegra.
Thanks, you guys.
Okay. You guys, thank you. Anyone have any questions left? Karen's on the line. Karen, you sticking around? Or Karen's frozen?
They probably are exiting out and it's just frozen.
Exiting out. Okay, let me pause.
Maybe